I do want to throw something in there about, and I do want to point this towards our guys out there who are afraid to pray, because I hated I do want to throw something in there about, and I do want to point this towards our guys out there who are afraid to pray, because I thought the prayers were pretty basic. Just you're pretty, hey, God, bless the food, bless the family, bless my career. May lots of money come in. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Those type of prayers.
That's not what you do.
So they started like that. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I know that there's a guy listening right now that you're going through the same thing where you're like, dude, I try, man. I sit there and I'm like, okay, Lord, what do we talk about? And you think of everything in the book, everything but the conversation that you're supposed to be having with the Lord. And I would just say to lean in a little bit more and then to give him time to speak. You may feel silly in the moment as you're sitting there and you're like, all right, Lord, I'm gonna let you talk. But don't let anything else get in the way. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Sit there for a little bit. And even if nothing happens, you got that much closer to seeking the Lord.
That's good. But I tell you this, if you don't fight, you said something about accountability. It's so important, and pushing through, because if you don't, because we're called to lead in the household. We're the head of the house. We're supposed to lead spiritually, lead our wives and our kids. If you're not doing that, your wife's going to, in return, she's going to go start leading, and it's not her job to lead the household. So in the midst of all that, because I'm saying this because it happened to me, I started drinking. I started doing all these things, and I just started burying it. So when men go, hey, we're getting together, I don't want to get together with you guys. Nah, I'm good. Because you get buried, you isolate. What you were saying about isolation, it's so true. So you have to fight. And if you're not hearing from God, I would press it even more. And guess what? Pastors are going to let you down. People are going to let you down, but it's not an excuse not to pursue God. Because, that's the bottom line. You got to find somebody that you can trust, and you're going to probably get rejected. You're going to probably get rejected another time, but don't ever lose sight of following Christ, because if not, your whole life will collapse.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because you have people listening right now that a pastor along the way has either offended them or hurt them. And so that was the end of their church-going life.
Offense will oftentimes create isolation. And we have to remember that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And, it's one of those things where when you see, there's a lot of these laws that exist in a lot of different ways and throughout the earth, but just look at what happens to a herd of whatever animal in Africa when there's something that's trying to chase them down and kill them. They don't go after the herd. They isolate one of the weakest ones, right? And in that isolation is where that one dies. And so we can't allow offense in our life to create isolation in us,
right?
Because it calls deep on our pride and makes it overcome, and whatever thing is going on there, and before you know it, that pride makes us get isolated. Now we want to back distance away, go do our thing, start seeing the world through our own lens of offense, and man, that's just not a good path to go down, because it's where we start to see this kind of thing start to derail in our own lives, when we start to get away from the people that need to call the blind spots out in our own life to help us stay on that straight and narrow. And so don't allow any offense or anything else to put you in isolation, because just speaking from my own experience, I tend to get reclusive. I tend to back away. I tend to isolate myself whenever I'm upset, if I'm battling any kind of depression or anxiety or whatever. I don't tend to, I'm an introvert at heart. And so I tend to pull away, when things get difficult or when things go the wrong way. And that's an area of my life that I got to constantly be aware of to make sure, am I living healthy right now? Am I calling on my brothers? Am I pulling on the people that I need to keep me accountable? So just don't allow yourself to get isolated, because it's a really dangerous place to be.
If you guys are okay with that, I want to hit on something that David said. David, you were talking about having somebody else in your life for accountability, somebody else to lean on. In the conversation with Jesus, I have to share this. It would be remiss if I didn't. But somebody had asked me, and this is when I was pretty confident in my walk with Jesus, and he said, how are you spending time with the Lord? I said, oh, well, you're going to want to sit back, man. In the morning, when I do a devotional from my favorite devotional book, when I'm on the toilet, I'm going over this scripture. When I'm in the shower, I'm listening to praise and worship. And when I'm in the truck, I'm listening to a sermon on the way into the station. I felt so proud about that answer. And he said, oh, okay. He said, you're washing your butt when you're in the shower listening to worship music. He said, you're paying attention to the road when you're driving. He said, so let me ask you the question again. When are you spending time with the Lord?
Right.
And it really rocked me because he's right. I'm occupied while trying to spend time with the Lord, and he won't have that. He's the King of Kings. When you go to his feet,
You were being Martha, not
yes, it's so busy with so many things when I should be sitting at the feet of Jesus. So I thought that was something that rocked my world, and that's changed the way that I spend my time.
It's the difference between performance and just recognizing the pleasure that God takes in us, just being us. And that's where that whole sonship comes into play, where you start to realize, man, he really does see me. When I see my kids, I don't need my kids to clean their room for me to love them more, or for me to, I don't need them to behave a certain way. I just delight in them. I delight in who they are. I just delight in their character, and just flaws and all, I delight in them. And so being a dad really helps me to see how my dad sees me. And
but there's something to be said, though. You touched the nerve about the clean room thing, but there, the extent of these conversations become challenging because of time constraints, and we can't unpack everything at the whole time. I do have some thoughts around the idea that having someone that is discipling you is not just for the sheer fact of accountability, which can always have a negative connotation to it, as is someone in my life that's just going to always correct me or whatever. That's not true discipleship. I think there's an element of that, but there's encouragement. There's life on life. It comes with all of it, right?
That's not real accountability. That doesn't create real accountability either.
Well, some people dig that, some people don't. I don't know. But what I see is that Jesus spent a whole lot of time with his boys for 3.5 years, right? And what we see in the text, we are action sequences, but we don't see a lot of the ordinary time of them walking, talking, eating, pooping, all of that stuff. But it's in there, and there's relationship with that, right?
And that's
to the
what
point,
I mean.
Let me just finish this thought. Is that the genesis of this conversation started off around prayer, right? And one of the things that happened relationally as they were following Jesus is that after some time that they've seen this dude do miracle after miracle after miracle, they said, yo, my man, whatever you're doing when you go off over there is different than whatever I've been doing. Can you teach me how to pray?
Wow.
Right? And so for me, that's part of, you start to see the spiritual rhythms of the people that you're around that God had placed in your life. So I think it's critical and important to not live in isolation for that. But it's not just having someone in your life so that they can hammer you and keep you, quote unquote, accountable, because I think that's so loaded in our church today, accountability. Yeah. And it's just like, for guys that have daddy issues and struggle like myself, just having someone tell me I'm bad or I'm not doing good, try harder. I would love that all day, because it plays the narrative that I believed all my life about love. And it goes against what God has said about love,
Right?
Which is like, yo, I love you as you are. I love you too much to leave you that way, but I love you as you are. And we'll walk this out, and I'll work out this transformation inside of you. And that's where I would say, Marcos, with the room thing, because you got one that is super clean, and I got one that a little bit, a little suspect. And so there is some of that, I love you either way. I do have to press in some discipline. I do have to press in some structure in your life, because if I don't do that, then I'm hindering you for later on. And what I've been called to do is to help steward you on behalf of the Father, right? You're not mine, you're his. I get to steward this gift. And how would I steward that? Where are the areas of opportunities and where I can bring correction and clarity using these gifts that they have, where maybe she's probably much like me, and I have those faults in my own life. And so I could just see it manifested in her in that way. And so it's just, I got to bring order to that.
No, you're absolutely right. And that is the true meaning of grace. Right? It's not that my grace is so sufficient that you don't have to clean your room because I love you. It's, I love you enough to show you enough grace and enough love to patiently walk you through this process to help you understand that your room needs to get cleaned. And it's this whole different way of looking at the same problem through a different lens of a true meaning of grace. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
Sorry, Joe, I cut you off times.
Oh, no. I was
playing double
trying
dutch.
to interrupt you, so that's my fault. And real accountability comes out of intimacy in relationship, was just my point. Real accountability comes out of intimacy in relationship, whether it's, and you're asking an important question, in which is like, well, what happens when you're trying, or you're trying to talk, you're trying to listen, maybe even you're trying to seek it in here and it's not coming, like, what do I do? And that's why for me, or I think it's inescapable, it's inevitable that we start our days and the day has begun. when we wake up, and who are you right then in that moment beginning to choose to become or be, not become, be. And it's in the being all day long that is what is available in Christ. It's in the being. It's not even in the becoming,
Right.
or in the doing that we do all every day, and we don't know how to not do as Americans. But anyway,
I think we really underestimate the power of process, and we put way too much weight, I think, on prizes.
Right.
And if there's one thing that I'm really unpacking in my own life right now, it's just gaining a new perspective and a new appreciation for the power of the process in our life, for the journey of our life. Even doing this with you guys, there's a power in this process of what we're doing here, not because of some means to an end, but because of what God is shaping in our own hearts just by the process of what's happening in this. And that's something that I still feel like it's an area of revelation that I'm unpacking even in real time. But even to the point of the topic of this conversation, time with Jesus, there's something about that process, about that routine. I'm a creature of routine. If I don't establish a routine, it's just not going to happen. So, but I've always seen routine as something towards winning something. I've always seen the workout as I want to lose 20 pounds. I've always seen let me stop eating the donut so that I can fit back into these pants.
We're clearly losing that battle.
I am losing that battle.
we are both clearly losing that battle.
But my point is that there's a different value there. It's not just about that end game. It's not just about that thing that you're trying to win. And I think our spiritual life is the same. It's not that I need to spend time with Jesus because I need to become that or do this or reach these levels of potential or achieve this seemingly unattainable thing. It's about the process of what happens between now and the end of the day. It's about who I become today as a result of that time that I spent this morning. And so just maybe it's because I'm getting older. I don't know, but I'm starting to understand that there's a process that we go through as people that therein lies life. Life is in the process. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm blinking and my kids are suddenly like, my son's voice is dropping. He's 13. I'm like, what in the world? I thought you were wasn't he just in diapers the other, like, you know what I mean?
It's crazy.
I'm trying to work this out in my own relationship with God. So please forgive me. The language is not perfect because I'm wrestling with it quite a bit. But even the language of process speaks to me about performance. And I just really somehow feel like he's drawing to something deeper in relationship. That when I'm in relationship, I'm not with my wife, I'm not thinking I'm in a process with her. I'm just in relationship with her. And I reap the benefits of that. And when there's tension, it's relationship. I'm not saying we're in a process, right? I'm just doing on life with her. And I can't articulate this properly. And so ADHD off ramp here for commercial break. Nobody's here got anything figured out. I guess I should look to the camera and say this. But none of us have figured everything out. We're just kind of wrestling through this collectively. And that's part of, the relationship. We were invited to do this podcast, right? I feel like that's what we are all having to wrestle with. Some of us like the invitation, some of us don't. And we're here out of an act of obedience, but not for a process. It's drawing me closer to a new facet of who he is. And so I'm going to stop rambling in a second, but let me just work this thought out, is every time again, I have been taught the word expectation in the church. It's attached to an outcome. How many people are waiting for a promise from God? How many, and it puts God into later and tomorrow. I need him right now.
This second.
Yeah. And so I have come to realize again, and still realizing that when he uses the word expectation, it's attached to an encounter, not an outcome. I'm getting a fresh revelation of who he is. Look at all these times these cats would build altars when he would reveal himself to them. They didn't stay around the altar. They built it, acknowledged it, and kept moving because the relationship keeps going. Yeah. It's not just this one and done thing. Yeah. And so I look at David, a man after God's own heart, and he was playing harps when nobody was looking, but he was worshiping a God, not for a process. He didn't even know he was in a process, but sheerly for the love of the one that had pulled on him, that had called him, the one that never excluded him from a party. That's who he played for. And then the reputation became, we know this dude that's mad pretty and he can play good, right? Like, that's my favorite thing about David. Like, for all of eternity, him and Rebecca are like, he's mad pretty. He's a handsome dude. They're like, for all of eternity, that word is there. Anyways, so I would just say I wrestle with the tension of that word process, even though I've used it myself, because I'm trying to sort out what made these people different in the word. And it wasn't that they were aware they were in a process. They weren't aspiring to get on platforms. They were aspiring to draw closer.
It's good.
Well, and that's what I mean when I say process, though.
I understand, but I'm saying this for this. I think language is important, and I think
Sure.
for the sake of people that have been burnt by church, people that have been burnt by man, people that have been told, hey, you move from A to get to B and you'll be better, right? Try harder, do more, speak more,
Become more,
dress
do.
this way.
Yeah, they're trigger words.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so it's like words like surrender to me are trigger words. I get super emotional about those words. It's like, dude, I don't want to wake up this way every single day. So I need help in understanding, not just through words, but someone modeling what this stuff looks like.
Right.
Right. And so there's a ton of people that can master, processes and rhythms but it doesn't change the heart.
Yeah. So I think we've got a lot here, and we could go on in this conversation and
It's
continue
a
to
good
go
conversation. It's a rich conversation.
Thanks a lot, Obi. It's your fault.
I mean, this probably, I'm taking all this in. I'll probably have to go back and watch this twice to get all these like golden nuggets that were spoken in this podcast. But I want to bring it real right now is like, look, if you're struggling, just trying to find that time with the Lord, do not give up. Get out of that bed. If you're going through something in life, go make that phone call. This is the whole point of this podcast, is what we're talking about. We've given you like so much, but don't do life alone. Don't do it alone. You can't do it as a man alone. You can't, you just can't. Because if anything, I can tell you that what I've been through in my life, you can't do it alone. And that's why I'm thankful for this podcast.
It's funny because as you're saying that, I'm like, sometimes I do like me some alone time. But yes, to your point, not that I consider myself sharp, but I'm definitely sharper than I was. And it's because of the sharpening stones that I have in my life. So I appreciate you guys. And I hope that everybody listening right now, I hope that you have an opportunity. I hope that you give yourself some hope and you provide yourself, or actually it's the Lord that's going to give you the faith that things are going to get better. Get to stand on that other side that says, I was on the side of, I didn't like prayer. Now here I am, where 25 minutes, 30 minutes later, I'm drenched in tears, full of love. I can't even explain. It's better than any drug I've ever taken. And it's that love with Jesus. That's the only thing that I can say, is that it's better than anything I've ever consumed or taken or that has made me high. That's real talk.
Drop the mic on that.
So with that, let's bring this episode to an end. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. This is the BetterMan365 Podcast, where you're going to get some real conversations with some real great men. Joe, Marcos, Jeff, got my man, forgot your name at the last second, David.
That's what my daddy used to do to me. No! Thanks a lot, Obi.
No. That's the problem. Well, that's why I never go around circles like this and name everybody's name.
Thanks, Obi, for opening that wound again.
The next episode happens to be about the role of the father, so
I'm ready.
That's a good tease right there. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, a lot of times in these podcast recordings, we're going to discuss topics that are derived from one of the great curriculums that we're working with right now from Better Man Ministries. They have a core curriculum. It's 11 weeks long. And our team's been going through some of this curriculum. Wanted to let you know that some of the things that we're discussing are coming out of this curriculum. And so we hope that you'll take the opportunity to be a part of this curriculum as well, sometime in the future, either alone, with a group of men, at your church. It's a fantastic resource, and I just want to encourage you to be a part of it.
Subscribe to the podcast and follow us at BetterMan365 on our social media platforms.